He had intimacy with God. He had intimacy with God. He experienced godliness. By the Seres HaDibris, we all had intimacy with God. And we know what happened. We had intimacy with God and we blew up. We died. And then we came to Moshe Rabbeinu. After we had initially told him, we came to Moshe in the first place and said we all want to be Nevi'im, right? Hashem said to Moshe, I'll talk to you. The Jews will see me talking to you, but they're not going to hear. We lobbied. We insisted that we wanted Hashem to talk to us directly, that we should all be Nevi'im. So we all became Nevi'im and we died 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, 8 times, 9 times, 10 times, and we came back to Moshe Rabbeinu and said we quit. Let's go back to plan A. And it says in Chumash that Moshe was disappointed. Moshe was so disappointed. He loved the idea, the pasuk in Chumash, Mi yiten kol Amah Hashem Nevi'im. I wish every Jew would be a prophet. The Jews chickened out. So the Yidden became Nevuim by Seres HaDibris, and it cost them their life each time they experienced Nevuah. Malachim brought them back their souls. They come to Moshe Rabbeinu and they say no more. So Moshe is the Navi. So now Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, Ki tikneh v'divri. Now that there are Jews who are, we call in Kabbalah language, in the worlds of Bria, Tzir, and Asiyah, Yidden who are not inspired, they don't have Ruach HaKodesh, they don't have Nevuah, it's your job to raise them up. That's the Ki tikneh v'divri. Hashem is speaking, Ve'ela Mishpatim asher tosim lifneim, is Hashem talking specifically to Moshe. And he's saying to Moshe, now that Seres HaDibris is over, now that the Jews chickened out from the plan A, that they would be Kol Amah Hashem Nevi'im, every Jew would be inspired by Ruach HaKodesh and Nevuah. So the Jews walked away. Dabar ata imanu v'nishma. Moshe Rabbeinu is the only prophet, and the rest of the Yidden in the world, are not going to be Nevi'im. So Hashem says to Moshe, you can't just teach Yidden Torah. You have to lift them up. Ki tikneh, they make a kinyan in Yidden. It becomes Moshe Rabbeinu's job to raise Yidden up who are by themselves not in the Madrega of Nevuah, that they should come close to the Madrega of Nevuah. This is why Eved Ivri is the first Parsha in Mishpatim, because it's Hashem speaking to Moshe about his job. There are Yidden in a lower level, and the Yidden in the lower level are not holding by Nevuah, they're not holding by Ruach HaKodesh. Hashem says to Moshe, you raise them up. But there's 2 levels in raising them up, and they are items 1 and 2 on your sheet. Okay? Eved Ivri and Amah HaIvriya. What is the difference between Eved Ivri and Amah HaIvriya? The difference between Eved Ivri and Amah HaIvriya is that Amah HaIvriya is a Jewish girl who was, quote, purchased by a Jew for service for a certain number of years. But Amah HaIvriya has a very, very, very important stipulation built in, that the optimum end of purchasing a Jewish girl as a maidservant in your house is that you marry her, or that you marry her to your son. It's called Yiyud. And the Gemara says that Rambam brings that mitzvahs yid kedemes lemitzvahs pidyon. It's preferred that a girl who's sold into, quote, slavery, she's a ketana, she's before bas mitzvah, when she reaches the age where the master has to let her go, a minute before the end of her time, when she's an Amah, he should say to her, Ariat Mokadeshus Li, with the money that I bought you with at the beginning of your servitude, and she becomes his wife. So Chassidus explains that Moshe Rabbeinu was told Yidden was supposed to be Nevi'im, or they asked to be Nevi'im, and then they walked away from the Nevuah. They walked away from, we can't do it, we're plotting. So Hashem says to Moshe, Ki tikneh v'divri, you have to make it your business, not only to teach Yidden Torah, but to raise them up. And in the raising of Yidden up, there are 2 dimensions. One level is you raising them Yidden up so that they're closer to the Madrega of Nevuah. And the second Madrega is you raise them up until they marry me, Hashem. Yiyud means that Moshe Rabbeinu was tasked to raise Yidden up from the Madrega of Bria into the Madrega of Atzilus. That's how Parshas Mishpatim begins. This is how Chassidus explains it. Parshas Mishpatim begins with the understanding the average Jew has no intimacy with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The average Jew is outside, is not a prophet. Moshe is inside. All the Yidden are outside. Hashem says to Moshe, don't think it's enough to teach them the Torah. You got to bring them in. You have to bring them in not just to the mitzvahs of the Torah, not just to the Halachos of the Torah, but you have to bring them into Ruach HaKodesh, to spirituality, to prophecy, to divine inspiration. Ki tikneh eved divri means you bring them close to it. And ki yim kerish es bitei la'amah. And this mitzvahs yiyud is that you actually raise up an neshama from the lower worlds of Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. You raise her up to the Madrega of Atzilus. So Parshas Mishpatim begins in a fascinating way. Parshas Mishpatim begins with instructions that are specific for Moshe Rabbeinu. For Moshe Rabbeinu, it's not for us, it's for him. And the instructions are, Jews are on lower levels. Your role as a leader is not just to teach them what to do. Your role as a leader is to raise them up and make them be on a higher level spiritually until the Madrega of Nevuah and Ruach HaKodesh. That's how you understand Eved Ivri, and that's how you understand Amah Ivriya. Now, next item, number 3. If you look at my page, I have bold Chassidus, and I have bold headings in the middle, Maki Nefesh. After Hashem begins Parshas Mishpatim with instructions to Moshe Rabbeinu. And like I said, Moshe Rabbeinu's job is to raise Yidden up. Now Hashem's to Moshe, now teach the Jews this, teach the Jews this. And in teaching the Jews this, he starts from the lowest thing in the world. What is the biggest Avera? What's the lowest thing that could possibly happen in the world to one human being and another? Where one Jew murders another, right? So you go from mitzvahs Eved Ivri and Amah Ivriya, which are such spiritual ideas of Moshe Rabbeinu using them from a higher level to a lower level, to the lowest level possible, the notion of one Jew taking the life of a fellow Jew. The logic to this is, because in the beginning of Mishpatim, Hashem is talking to Moshe, and from the Din Reitzeach, which is Pasuk Yud Beis, Hashem tells Moshe what to tell us, and when Hashem is telling Moshe what to tell us, he starts from the lowest Jew. The lowest Jew is a Jew who is subject, who is suspect, who is liable, who is vulnerable, God forbid, to kill a fellow Jew. And that's the first halacha in Parshas Mishpatim that Hashem is saying, not to Moshe Rabbeinu for Moshe Rabbeinu, he's saying it from Moshe Rabbeinu to all of us. You're not allowed to murder. And if you murder, you get murdered yourself. You kill, you get killed. You take a life, you lose your life. Because of the principle of midah keneged midah. So you're dealing with the lowest kind of a person who is able to take the life of another person, and the halacha is maki ish v'meis. You kill a person, meis yumas, you die. Now, number 4. What happens if you murder by mistake, by accident? Now, we're not talking about oinus. We're not talking about something which is completely out of your control. We're talking about what they would call in the American legal system manslaughter, right? There's murder 1, murder 2, murder 3. There's manslaughter 1, manslaughter 2. Manslaughter means someone got killed because of your negligence. You didn't kill them with wanton intent. You didn't go over to them with a gun and shoot them in the head, which is called murder 1. You were driving too fast on a highway and it was slippery and you lost control of your car. So you didn't mean to kill a person, but that person didn't die by mistake. That person died because you didn't behave responsibly. That's what shegig means. If something happens that's totally random, where you, in other words, it's hard to come up with a scenario on the top of my head where you had no intention whatsoever and someone got killed by a complete mistake, that's not a shegig. That's called an oinus. And an oinus has no liability. If something happens and you had no intention whatsoever, you don't go to Ari Miklat. A shegig means you had intent, but you didn't calculate correctly and you brought death to another person. The halachos of a maki nefesh bishgaga. This is item 4 on your sheets. The tzech bishgaga is that he goes to the cities of refuge, he goes to an Ari Miklat. Now, Rabbi side, we know the famous chinuch, the Rebbe brings it in all of his Maimonim and all of his sichos, that this is the classic idea of the Rebbe, which explains the Rebbe's position on prisons in America also. The Rebbe holds that putting a person in jail is murder. The Rebbe does not believe that every person who commits a crime should go to jail. A person who commits a crime should pay for his crime by working off the debt or whatever the case is. But putting a person in jail, taking away a person's freedom, it says in Sefer HaChinuch, is tantamount to murder. Which is why in Jewish law, the only biblical case, the only case min ha-Torah, where you are incarcerated or you go to jail, is for killing a person. If you stole money, you pay double. If you hurt a person, you pay off whatever expenses there are. But the American law, the Torah law is not like American law. It's not Achmanis. They take your shirt off your back. You have to pay. You live in poverty until you pay your debt. The only crime for which a person is locked up is for murder. Because locking a person up, putting a person in jail is similar to killing him. You killed by shoygig, again, shoygig doesn't mean by accident. Shoygig means without wanton intent. You were not trying to kill this person. Your negligence, your misactions brought his death. The consequence of that is that you go to the cities of refuge, which is a form of a death penalty.
Right. They were treated like prisoners in Ar Miklat?
No.
They just lived in their own city.
They didn't. The people of the city of Miklat had to feed them and clothe them. But understand that there were sharpshooters standing outside the town, the vigilantes, the relatives of the people they murdered, waiting for them to make a mistake and step across the line from here to here, and they'll shoot them dead. So they didn't have to have gates on those prisons. You understand?
There is like idea of jail like that the place is supposed to set up if you need people because they're not safe.
Right. So then you're not putting them in jail to punish them. You're putting them in jail to protect the society. It's true. But jail as a punishment, as an oynish, in America they put everybody in jail. Go ahead.
How do you kill someone intentionally but unintentionally?
If you're driving too fast on a highway and there's a slippery patch and you lose control of your car and you kill the person, you didn't mean to kill them.
That's not intentional, that's by mistake.
That's not by mistake. That's by negligence. A mistake means you're driving on a bridge and the bridge collapses and you land on a ship that's underneath you and you kill a person. That's a mistake. Now you can argue that in the Halachos of Ari Miklat, there's a din, there's a difference if you fall off the ladder, if you're going up or you're going down. But which is interesting. But shoygig does not mean an accident. Shoygig means a miscalculation. You knew what you were doing, and you made a mistake in how you calculated the circumstance, and you brought death to another human being. Now, number 5. Here's a great question. The chinuch, Sefer HaChinuch, one of the Rishonim. The Rebbe quotes it all the time. Number 5 is fascinating. What's more important? This is an age-old question. Bein adam lachavere, bein adam lamakom. A guy killed a man, and he's standing and davening with so much kavanah you could see fire coming out of his head. You rip him away in the middle of his shmoneh and you take him off and you kill him. What's number 5? The guy's a kohen, and he's on the Mizbeach, and he's doing the avodah, and he doesn't have a problem with God. He just has a problem with that guy who he murdered. And when he's bringing the carbon, he's bringing it with his whole heart. You don't say, let him finish his worship, let him finish his shmoneh, he's doing a good thing, and we'll take care of the bein adam lachavere, the fact that he killed a man. After he finishes his bein adam lamakom, you say, you killed a man. We're not letting you daven. We're not letting you finish your carbon. Now there's halachos about what to do. Other people may complete the carbon for him. But the murderer is not allowed to finish his carbon because, again, this is an interpretation. The Torah is teaching us that when there's a juxtaposition, when there's an interface of an issue between man and God, and an issue between man, and in this case we're talking about murder, the man and man takes precedence. You stop him from doing avodah Hashem.
Is there also an idea that people used to go hold on to his Mizbeach?
Yeah, there's a story with Yair and Sriya, right? And they took him off and they killed him.
So that's 2 meanings?
I don't understand the question.
You said it means a kohen who's specifically a kohen who's doing.
That's what Rashi says. That's what Rashi says. There's a story that Yair and Sriya was not a kohen. He was a Yisrael. There's a Shevet Yehuda. He went to the Mizbeach to protect himself, and Shlomo had them take him off the Mizbeach and take him and kill him. Go ahead.
Would that happen with everybody? Went like
Yeah.
it's like going and touching the base like they do.
No. That's a story in Tanakh. People ran to the Beis Hamikdash. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I remember someone telling me that if a kohen kills someone intentionally, unintentionally, he can't be serviced as a kohen.
He can't even duchen. He can't even duchen. The halach is b'zman hazeh. If a kohen is in a car accident and somebody died, and in this case it could be a oinus sheba oinus, he's not allowed to duchen. It's a practical halacha l'maaseh. It could happen.
He can't take a lead either.
I don't know about that. He can't duchen. Aliyah weiß ich nicht. And the reason is because kohenim b'chlal and duchening, especially as an from shalom, if death came through your hand, it's not a punishment. It's not a punishment. If death came through your hand, they don't let you do in Yonam of Chesed. In other words, you've lost your status as a Ish HaChesed. That's a halacha l'maaseh. It could happen today. It may have happened. Maybe some kohen who by mistake was in a car accident. If death came to a person in the hands of a kohen, he's not allowed to duchen. And about getting an aliyah veisach nicht, I don't remember.
Applies today though?
Yeah, of course. It's in the Shulchan Aruch.
Only if he's the driver, yeah? No?
Obviously, if he's responsible. If it has to do with him. Now, what's the next halacha? Maki ava ve'ime. Here's where we're starting to become creative. Maki ava ve'ime. You hit your father and your mother. And you drew blood. You hear me? You hit your father and your mother and you drew blood. You're chayev misa. But hitting your father and your mother and drawing blood is part of the halachos of Reitzeach. If you hit your father and your mother and you draw blood, it's included in Parshas Mishpatim amongst the halachos of a murderer. You hear me? Why? So first of all, I want to say tangentially, this is why the halacha is that if you're a doctor, it's better that you don't operate on your own parent, because you are by default drawing blood. If you're the best doctor and nobody else is able to do it but you, then you're allowed to operate on them because you're saving their life. But hitting your father and your mother and drawing blood is a din in the tzitcha. You're chayev misa. You didn't kill him. Huh? If you didn't draw blood, you're not chayev misa, but you're an idiot.
What if it's shaking?
So I don't think it's not a miklat for drawing blood b'shegig. But b'mezid, if you hit your father and mother intentionally and you drew blood, you're chayev misa. Now, why is hitting your father and your mother in the dinim of the tzitcha? So I have 2 points to make. The first is, the tzitcha means you're taking a life. So tzitcha means taking a life. When you hit your father and your mother, what are you declaring? When you hit your father and your mother on purpose, in a way that you draw blood, you're declaring a separation between yourself and your parent. It is philosophically self-murder. If you could hit your father and make him bleed, and you'll see in 2 psukim from now, you can curse your father and your mother, the halacha is doing that act is separating yourself from your roots, which means the chiyuv misa is not for drawing blood from your father. The chiyuv misa is because that act is a spiritual act of suicide. You killed yourself because you separated yourself from your roots, and that's my insight into why maki ava ve'ime is included in the halachos of Reitzeach. And then I have a second insight, which is brought in the Gemara very famously. The Gemara says the lashon malikot lakula, malikot lapalga. Drawing blood is the beginning of killing somebody. And the expression is, it doesn't make a difference if you killed him completely or killed him partially. Drawing blood from your father and the mother is the beginning of the end of his life. And this is why it's considered murder. If you do it to another person, there's obviously no death sentence for sure not. There's no punishment b'chlal. But if you hit your father and your mother and you drew blood, you're makav ve'imei.
Why only if you drew blood?
That's the halach. You drew blood, you're chayev mis. Now, what's the next halacha? Kidnapping. You kidnapped a person and you sold him into slavery. Kidnapping is also kidnapping to sell, right? But there's a word for it. I mean, apparently that happens in the modern world also. The trafficking in human beings is considered murder. Trafficking in human beings, it's not only that the punishment is death, it's included in the halachos of the tzitcha. It's considered halachos of murder. Why? Same principle. When you take a human being away from his family and you send him off into a place where he doesn't have an identity, when you're ripping him away from his roots, you're killing him. Just like when you hit your father, you're ripping yourself away from your roots, and that's a phenomenon of murder. When you kidnap another human being and you sell him off into slavery, you're separating that human being from his roots. It has, the punishment is death. But the sequence, in other words, what we're doing in this class is showing the hemshech. The sequence is saying kidnapping a person for trafficking is considered an act of murder. Cutting a person off from his roots is killing him.
Is it only a Jew?
The next halacha Rabbi say is makal of imei. If you curse your father and your mother, yechayev mis. Now wait. Again, understand that the issue of this class is not to talk about each halacha per se. It's to talk about smichus, the proximity of the halachas. Cursing your father and your mother is considered an act of murder for the same reason that drawing blood from your father and your mother. You're killing yourself, not your parent. If you could curse your parent, you've separated yourself from your parent, you're separating yourself from your parent, you lost your roots. So spiritually, it's an act of suicide regard to yourself. This is why the halacha of a makal love of if you curse your father and your mother, you're chayiv misa. Now, Rashi observes. Why do you make an interruption? You hit your father and your mother and you draw blood, you're chayiv misa. Then you change the subject. You kidnap somebody and sell them over to slavery, you're chayiv misa. Then you go back. You curse your father and your mother, chayiv misa. Why don't you put the two acts of hitting your father, your mother, and cursing your mother successively? The answer in Nigle is to determine that the oynish is different. For hitting your father and your mother, the oynish is, I think, chenek, which means suffocation, and for cursing your father and your mother, the oynish is skila, which is a much more severe oynish. And the reason the psukim separate in between the two with the phenomena of kidnapping is to underscore this point. I'm going to do one more. I really have two more to do, but yeah, go ahead.
And you curse your parents, how you
It doesn't mean that.
okay, what if you're like mad at the moment you curse them, like you just destroyed all your roots, like you still have parents, like you still can fix your relationship. Like you're saying that when you curse your parents once, boom.
Halachos HaTorah are dinim, they're laws. Taimei Torah are explanations for laws. Remember, this is all me. I'm making this all up. So
Oh, you're making it up.
I told you I'm making it up. The din is, if you curse your parents, and it means you cursed your parents.
Just the reason.
Is cursing like the curse word?
If you curse your parents and you use Hashem's name, you use one of Hashem's, and the halacha may be, in some of the curses of God, if you have to use one of the Shemis HaMeforashim. You have to use one of the biblical names for God, and in some cases you have to actually use Shem Hashem. Otherwise it doesn't. In other words, there's very specific halachas of what kind of curse gets you to death sentence. You got to be really low to research what kind of curse you're going to need to get yourself killed, and get yourself killed for that kind of research. Please don't look it up. It's better that you don't know. Now, then comes very fast. What's the next halacha? Chevra, I'm holding by number 9. Means you hit a person. Huh? You hit a person. And you wanted to kill him. And he didn't die. This is included in the halachas v'tzech. You hit a person, you wanted to kill him, and he didn't die. So what's the halacha? They put you in jail. To see whether he'll survive. He'll survive. If the guy dies later, you're killed as a result of an act that you did because you killed him. You had kavanah to kill him. You killed him. Yesh beikadei laharga. You didn't kill him with a little pebble. You hit him with a stone or with a club that was big enough and heavy enough to kill a man or a woman or a child. You intended to kill him. The pasuk says v'la yamus. The meaning always means you wanted to murder him. He never didn't die. So the first thing they do is, Rashi says, they put you away to see if he recovers. Im yakum al mishante. If he recovers, they don't kill you because the man didn't die even though you wanted to kill him. What we call in America attempted murder. And you don't go to jail. You got to pay for it. You have to pay. Right? What do you have to pay? You have to pay nezek, tar, ripui, sheves, and boishes. Now one last halacha b'tzech and then I'm going to stop. What if you kill a slave? And we're talking about a non-Jewish slave. Now chevra, understand. When a non-Jew is purchased as a slave or captured as a slave in war, you toivel him in a mikveh. And there's a very interesting halacha. If he jumps ahead of you and toivels himself and says, I am toiveling to be a ger tzedek, he's a free man and he's a Jew. So what you have to do is you have to hold him physically and dunk him with intent and say as you're dunking him, I'm being toivel m'shem avdus. Because an Evet Knaini is a half a Jew. He's a half a Jew. He's mechoyev in all mitzvahs like women. Okay? So murdering an Evet Knaini is murdering a Yid. He has the halachas of a Yid. There's one exception. If you kill an Evet Knaini, even if he dies 3 months after the fact, if we can prove that his death was a consequence of your action, you are chayiv misa zeritzeach. The one exception is that the slave is yours. It's called din yema yemayim. If you are a slave owner, you're not allowed to beat your slaves. If you beat one of your slaves and you kill him, you're chayiv misa. But if you beat him and he dies after 24 hours, yem shuka yemayim, slaves 24 hours, this is a dispensation. It's an exception. Since the slave belongs to you, the Eibishter paters you from an Einish Mavis, because he's yours. He's financially yours. Now, this is a very weird halacha. You kill a person, you chayav misa. My lumdis is, and this is going to come up in later classes, a slave belongs to his master as kinyan mammon, as a financial commodity, and he belongs to his master as a kinyan aguf, inyani iser. His body belongs to his master as well. So there's two obligations, there's two relationships between a master and a Jewish slave. He's financially yours and he's religiously yours. If he didn't die within 24 hours, so the religious aspect of his belonging to you goes away. The only thing remains is that he belongs to you financially, and this is why you're not put to death, because if he lasted 24 hours, you're only considered his owner monetarily, financially, which means we look at him as a non-Jew, and you're not chayav misa. I will continue this next week, bli neder.